Welcome back. Years ago, I abandoned this concept. Years ago, I decided, you know what, the list videos aren't worth it, but I really enjoy doing lists, so I'm stuck. I'm also watching as Adam Wilde from the Steve Dangle podcast did a top 5 defenseman video. He did top 5 centers as well. The internet's letting him know what they think about the list, and, it has me thinking, it doesn't matter. I've seen it with the NHL. The NHL themselves put out a list, and immediately it's, oh, yeah, they got to kiss up to that team. Well, they have to kiss up to that player. Well, this list is dumb. So that's going to happen. I know it's going to happen here. I will be doing lists of goalie, defensemen, forwards, and they'll all post while we're on vacation. So at the time this posts, I'm on vacation. So that definitely does seem to make a difference. Not the first time I've done that either, where I've made a video thinking, boy, the comment section, I'll just be on holiday. All right, so top 30 defensemen. Now, I had intended to do top 20. Initially, I thought, I could do top 10. There are way too many good defensemen. There are good defensemen that are not on this list. And I apologize because, honestly, and I said this before, I think we're in an age where defense, I don't think it's ever been better than what it is. And I think the players playing on the blue line are the best we've ever seen. And I think the same of goaltending. Although goaltending may have peaked 5 years ago, we'll see if the goaltending numbers come back up. But anyways, that's a whole other discussion. So number 30 on this list, New York Islanders defenseman. And this is where I'm kind of stuck. So Ryan Pulock is number 30 on the board. I don't have Pulock in the top 30. Pulock is a very good defenseman. Pulock I have at 30th. And then at 29th, I have another New York Islanders defenseman. This is not an error. I even double-checked that myself where I'm like, really? Yeah, no. Back to back. Noah Dobson. And this is where the issue comes in, where Dobson, I think, offensively is fantastic, and he's going in this direction. And Pulock, it feels like it's more steady. So for me right now, I think Dobson, this coming season, is going to be better. And this is me trying to figure out who going into this season I think are the best defensemen in the NHL. So not just looking at last season going, this was the best, trying to figure out where I think they're all going to end up. Once you get into the top 10, it's kind of a mess. Speaking of which, at number 28, a Vegas defenseman. I hadn't actually intended on writing the first names, but here we are. Alex Pietrangelo. I was just going to do the last names, but since I've done it for the first two, now I got to do it the whole way through. So, Alex Pietrangelo, 28th. Excellent defenseman. Picked up, of course, from St. Louis. He's been very good in Las Vegas. A big part of the reason why the Vegas Golden Knights win their Stanley Cup. I like Pietrangelo. I don't have him as the highest rated Vegas defenseman, though. Shea Theodore is yet to come. I think Shea Theodore is going to be the better defenseman of the two. I guess honorable mention to Alec Martinez. There are so many good defensemen in the NHL. Number 27, a Buffalo defenseman. So this is part of the reason that I expanded it. Part of the reason I expanded it is because Owen Power had a very good rookie season, and I think he has superstar written all over him. He's not quite there yet. I wouldn't be surprised if he has a Moritz Seider type downward beat, at least. And I say that even though Detroit fans are going to say only the first half of the season. I know, but sophomore slumps happen. So I wouldn't be surprised if Owen Power has a bit of a sophomore slump. His points total by the end of the year may end up right around the same where it was this year. But Owen Power I really think he's going to be a star in the NHL. So this is probably the lowest he's ever going to be on a countdown like this that I do. Love Owen Power's game. Number 26. This is insane, isn't it? Number 26, because again, there's a lot of defensemen in the NHL that are very good. Now, Brandon Montour. It's interesting because before this past season, I don't think Montour would have ended up on a top 30 or a top 40 list. Not saying that as any kind of slight to Montour, but boy, did he have a career year this past season. So as much as I want to have Montour higher up, I look at that and say, okay, that looks like a career year. If he can do that again this coming season, absolutely, then he gets bumped up. But for right now, I think 26 is the right spot. I went back and forth on this list. I really did. And so Montour at 26 kind of works. But yeah, again, I went back and forth on this list quite a bit. Number 25, going with the Seattle defenseman for this spot. Another guy who had a career year. So with Vince Dunn, it's interesting because I've always liked Vince Dunn's game, although the offensive side of it's just part of the story. But yeah, he had a great year this past season. Again, much like Montour, I feel like that's a career year. I don't know if he can do that again. When I've done best of lists before, guys with career years, I think I've overvalued. So in this case, might I be overly punishing guys with career years? Maybe, but they're still on the list. Vince Dunn ends up 25th from the Seattle Kraken. And I think they did a very good job picking up Vince Dunn. I think that was really smart. At the time, I hailed that move. You guys can go back and look at the expansion draft videos. I was very much sold on Vince Dunn. And so, yeah, I think that was a smart move on their part. Number 24. This is one I went back and forth on, too. And I think he's underrated. I'm going to say straight up, he may very well be underrated on this board. I mean, when was the last time Ottawa played? Thomas Chabot. Thomas Chabot is a minute-munching defenseman. I don't see him on very many lists when they're talking about best defenseman in the NHL. And certainly since I have him at 24th, I'm not saying he sets the world on fire, but is he underrated? Yes. Chikrin's not on the board. I don't have Sanderson on this one either, but definitely overtime. I could have done top 120. I'm not doing it, but I could have. And maybe next year, maybe I expand this to top 250, 300. Sure, why not? Because there are a lot of really good defensemen. I'm going to be saying that a lot in this video, aren't I? I've already said that a lot in this video, haven't I? Yeah. So anyways, do you like my Victoria Royals jersey? I do. Anyways, yeah, Chabot, number 24. I really like the defenseman quite a bit, and I was like, he's got to be in there. So initially I was like, I don't know. Then I was like, no, I looked at the minutes, I looked at the advanced stats, and I was like, yeah, Chabot has to be in here. I did go through standard stats, I went through advanced stats, I went through all of it, and came up with my own way of doing this, as I usually do. Number 23. That's the argument. Number 23 from Minnesota. It's not Jonas Brodin, although he can get an honorable mention. Maybe one of the more underrated defensemen in the NHL, Jared Spurgeon. Consistent defenseman, captain for Minnesota, solid at both ends of the ice. Again, I do think he's underrated. I'm a big fan of Spurgeon, what he brings to the team. And again, I feel like this is kind of a loaded position in the National Hockey League. And so you have a lot of guys who are underrated. We do. We have a lot of underrated defensemen in the NHL. And if you get mad about a guy who's not on the board, I know that's going to happen. Because again, when I was doing this up, there were a lot of guys that I was like, well, they got to be on there. Well, he has to be on there. Why isn't? And it just, there's not enough board. I know I have bigger boards. I'm not doing a top 120. It's not happening. Number 22. And so from Detroit, it's got to be Ben Sherratt, right? No. It's Moritz Seider. Seider, by the end of the year, he was back to his game. I think Seider was excellent once he was paired with Wallman. That definitely seemed to help. The chemistry was there between the two of them. And I like Seider. I think he's a very good defenseman. And so I had to have him in the top 30. I was like, no, he's going to have a good year. I really believe that. And so yeah, he's in the number 22 spot. But again, by next summer, would I be surprised if he's top 10? Not really. Not at all. Number 21. And coming off of an excellent season with Carolina, Brent Burns. So I guess honorable mention, Dmitry Orlov. Honorable mention, Brett Pesce. Still a Kane at the time I'm recording this. But Brent Burns had a fantastic season with Carolina. It just worked. This is why when there was talk about Karlsson going there, I thought, why? And I'm not going to get into whether or not Karlsson or Burns get along, because it doesn't matter. If you win, you get along. But the reality is that Burns, I think, had the best season this year that he's had in at least 5 years. And so, yeah, I wouldn't mess with that and pick up Karlsson. That's just me personally. So number 20 on the board, a player that I do think is, at this point in time, probably a bit underrated, maybe even on this board. Shea Theodore. Anaheim fans, look away. But yes, Shea Theodore is an excellent two-way defenseman. Probably doesn't get the kind of press he should because Vegas is such a team-oriented squad where it's not any one player above everybody else. Mark Stone, as good as he is, You know that Vegas can win if Mark Stone's out. You know that Vegas can win if Petrangelo's out. We saw how many goaltenders they went through. They can win with a fourth or fifth string goaltender. So I think that it prevents as much attention from being paid to Shea Theodore as he probably deserves. And yeah, he's number 20 on the board. Number 19, and this one was tough because we don't know what he's going to be like this year. But I felt like, no, he's still, and he said he's 100% healthy. Hopefully nothing happens between when I record this and when it goes live on the channel. Zach Werenski. Werenski, is he overpaid? I thought at the time he signed that contract he's probably a bit overpaid. That being said, is it within Columbus's pay structure? Yeah. So I still think Werenski's an excellent defenseman, and that contract will probably age just fine because the cap's supposed to go up next summer. Werenski, if he comes back and plays the way that we know he can, he probably moves up the list next year. But I have Werenski at number 19. Number 18, a defenseman that gets a lot of criticism, and I get it, but I think people are a little bit over the top with it at times. So is Morgan Rielly going to win a Norris Trophy anytime soon? Probably not. But he plays a lot of minutes. He's very good offensively. I don't think he's as bad defensively as some think he is. I'm not saying that he's going to, be top 5 in Norris or anything like that anytime soon, but I do think Rielly takes more criticism than he should. In part because when you play in Toronto, that does happen. Absolutely, you get under the microscope a little more than you do when you're somewhere else. But Rielly's a very good defenseman. He's not going to make you think, I don't know if I'd take Yossi or Rielly, but he's still a very good defenseman. So Rielly, to me, has to be top 20. And, yeah, I have him at 18. At 17, and dropping down the list, and part of this is age, the injuries he's coming off of, and hopefully this season John Carlson is able to get his production where it should be and play a full season. John Carlson, of course, a defenseman who probably should have won a Norris Trophy at some point and hasn't. I know Caps fans aren't happy about that. But yeah, I like John Carlson's game. I think he's a solid defenseman. Is he top 20 in the NHL? Yes. If he's healthy and he plays like we know he can, he's top 10 still. But at this point, I couldn't justify having him higher than 17th. Number 16 on the board. Number 16 is not Eric Chernak, but I can give him an honorable mention because, man, he plays through injuries, doesn't he? But for this one, so having two excellent defensemen on a team helps. And it feels like Mikhail Sergachev is on this trajectory. And Hedman, I think, is slipping a little bit. Not a lot. I've seen some lists, and I'm like, Hedman should be higher than what he is, I think, on some of these lists. But we'll get to that when I get to Hedman, which isn't for a while yet. Spoiler alert. But Sergachev has come into his own and does seem to be getting better every year. And I would expect that to continue. And at some point in time, he becomes the go-to guy in all situations as Hedman, gets to that point where just the amount of hockey they've played, it's going to wear a defenseman down. So Sergachev should be the beneficiary of that and could be, for the next 10 years, could be the leader on that blue line in Tampa Bay. They have an embarrassment of riches in that organization. It has taken a bit of a hit the last few years because of cap concerns, but there's still a pretty deep organization there. Number 15 on the board from the LA Kings. Drew Doughty's had an excellent couple of years in the NHL. Not this past season, but the year before, it felt like he was trying to prove that he should be part of Team Canada for the Olympics. Of course, Canada didn't go to the Olympics, or at least the NHL didn't go to the Olympics, so he didn't get a chance to play for Team Canada at the Olympics. But yeah, Drew Doughty, I don't know if he would have made it onto Team Canada, but man, he was trying to make them regret it before he got hurt. This past season, he had another very good year. Doughty is seen as, maybe being a little over the hill. Definitely, 5-10 years ago, he'd be top 5. But he's still a very good defenseman in the National Hockey League. And, you take him lightly. You do that at your own peril. Number 14 on the list. Another one, too, that I don't think gets as much attention as he should. Had an excellent start to the season. Hampus Lindholm. Hampus Lindholm, since arriving in Boston, has been fantastic. One thing that does make me think Boston may very well be able to stay as a playoff team and could be dangerous next year is that blue line. They have a very good blue line. They're very well coached. They've had excellent goaltending for the last couple of years. And Hampus Lindholm, he was a beast at points this past season, especially while McAvoy was out. So before McAvoy came back from injury, Hampus Lindholm was doing everything. And so to me, he belongs in the top half on this board, which I think is the highest he's been. Now I'm thinking, back to 2017, 2016. Maybe when he was in Anaheim, I had him top 10 at some point. But yeah, 14 isn't bad. Number 13. Now we're getting to the point where I don't really need to look at the paper as much. And since it's another Carolina defenseman, Jacob Slavin. Jacob Slavin is a defenseman that if we had the Rod Langway Award for defensive defenseman, Slavin would be a front runner every single year. That being said, on this board, I have him at 13th. I really felt like, well, Slavin's going to be top 10. And then I was just going through all the names, and he ends up in 13th spot. Not that there's anything wrong with that. You look at the guys who I have beneath him there, and it's a pretty strong list. And I know Canes fans are very much in favor of Slavin. I do expect some blowback because Slavin's at 13th. But everybody knows I'm a fan of Slavin. Like, if I was getting a jersey for Carolina and I had to put a player's name on the back that's currently playing there, his name's the one that's going on the back because he is my favorite member of the Carolina Hurricanes. Spoiler alert and all that. But yeah, Slavin at 13. At 12, and showing how tough it is to get into the top 10, because I've been clear that the blue line in Florida needs Aaron Ekblad. The difference between Ekblad being in the lineup and not being in the lineup is huge. So Florida has two defensemen on this board, and Ekblad and Montour. I guess Forsling would get an honorable mention as well. But yeah, Ekblad is a fantastic defenseman when healthy, and I really believe that 12th is the right spot for him. Again, I went through this list a few times, and then I'm like, all right, that's it. That's as good as it's going to get. I reached that point where I poured over enough, and I'm like, okay, we're just going to do this, and the internet's going to do what the internet's going to do. I'm at peace of mind with where I've got everybody, including at number 11. So New Jersey Devils defenseman, not Damon Severson, and he's been traded, of course, so I wouldn't have a Devils logo up for him anyways. But yeah, it's Dougie. Now, I've always been a fan of Dougie's from his days in Boston. I always thought he was underrated. That being said, he had some mixed results with Calgary and then Carolina. It just works in New Jersey. He had a great year for the Devils. His points production was fantastic. And if he equals that again this year, he'll go into the top 10 for next year's video. But yeah, Hamilton ends up just outside the top 10. Doesn't quite get into the top 10 because the top 10 is ridiculous. Just saying right now, the top 10 is ridiculous in the National Hockey League right now. Starting with, at number 10, it's a Winnipeg logo, so it's got to be Dylan DeMello, right? So, Josh Morrissey, the first half of this past season, it looked like he had a really good chance of winning the Norris Trophy. Like, even though Karlsson was producing so well, Morrissey's play was fantastic. And I was very vocal about how I believed Morrissey was putting together a Norris-level campaign. And then in the second half of the season, I don't know if he was hurt, I don't know if he was being overplayed or just went into a slump, but whatever happened, his play dropped off in the second half. He slipped out of Norris consideration, but still, to me, Josh Morrissey is a top 10 defenseman in the NHL. I think he's fantastic. One thing I have to watch for is Josh Morrissey, Norris Trophy. There's a Josh Norris in Ottawa, so if I say Josh Norris by accident, well, see, and if you're a Winnipeg fan, you can say, we like our Josh Norris better than the Ottawa Josh Norris, and then you wink, and you hope people understand what you're talking about, because otherwise they're going to think you're crazy. Number 9 on the board. Look at that, another Buffalo logo. So Sabres fans should be happy. That being said, Rasmus Dahlin at 9. People may debate that. May not like Dahlin being that low. There may be some who think Dahlin's way too high. This is one of the beautiful things about list videos. Everyone's opinion is quite different. Darlene is a fantastic defenseman, got off to an amazing start with Buffalo this past season. It wasn't something that was going to be maintained, and I knew that, and I kept saying that. Like, he's not going to keep this up. But still, by the end of the year, he was one of the better scoring defensemen in the NHL. Norris Trophy in his future, I will say yes. There are definitely maybe multiple Norris Trophies in his future, but he's got a teammate here in Owen Power that could challenge him for that and maybe split the vote a little, right? So that's something to keep an eye on. But yeah, Darlene, he's going to be worth every cent of whatever he gets on the extension for Buffalo. His cap hit $6 million. I would say $9-10 million on the next contract. Easily justifiable. Even if it's $10 million plus, I would say it'd be easily justifiable because of the trajectory he's shown. Remember when he was drafted, scouts said he was the most complete draft pick on the blue line they had seen since Denny Potvin, which made me feel horrible for Darlene because that's really heady territory and he's not going to live up to that. Not right away. Number 8, Vancouver. And I have seen Canucks fans upset that Tyler Myers, of course I'm kidding, but upset that Quinn Hughes isn't ranked higher. And I would imagine there will be Canuck fans that feel that way with this. But I went over it, and Quinn Hughes is an excellent offensive defenseman, and he's better defensively than he gets credit for as well. Absolutely. The advanced stats tell you he's actually a really good all-around defenseman. But I felt like the 7 guys who were ahead of him, I still have ahead of him. And so it's not any kind of a slight to Quinn Hughes. It's just the 7 guys ahead of him, that's where it is, and we'll see if that changes next summer when I do this again, probably for when I go on holiday. But yeah, list videos are for when I'm on holidays. But yeah, Quinn Hughes at number 8. And I know this list won't be changed over the next 10 days because nobody's playing hockey, so kudos. The only thing that might change is maybe one of these guys gets traded. So if that happens, there you go. Forgot the trade. Number 7 on the board, and the second Boston defenseman. And this is really where... And so I'll talk about this because I'm both a Bruins fan and a Canucks fan. I know it's a conflict of interest. At this point, I don't even have to say the name because people are going to see the logo and know. Charlie McAvoy. Charlie McAvoy, offensively, not as gifted as Quinn Hughes, but in terms of an all-around, all-encompassing defenseman, I would take McAvoy over Hughes. So if it's a Game 7 and I need a shutdown shift, I'm taking McAvoy over Hughes. I feel like McAvoy's the better all-around defenseman, but it is tough. It is close, and again, you guys can let me know whatever order you want them in. And yeah, now number 6 is where it gets really, really difficult. So yes, San Jose defenseman, and this is where things get really interesting. So if I was doing this list last summer, where would Erik Karlsson have landed? I would think if I'd done this video last summer, and I didn't do the list videos last summer, I think Karlsson would have been in this category. I don't think Karlsson would have been off the board altogether. I can't say for sure he wouldn't have because I didn't do the video. You never know. Karlsson scored 101 points this year. He has to be in the top 10. He absolutely has to be in the top 10. I don't feel like he's the best defenseman in the NHL based on that season for the same reason that I mentioned career years for Dunn and Montour. I think Karlsson had a career year as well. However, should Karlsson get 75 points this year if he stays in San Jose? Yeah, probably. Could he get 80? Absolutely. With San Jose's issues, could he end up with 90? Because they could rely on him a ton. Absolutely. If he gets traded, will his points drop? Very likely. And so that's where things get difficult. And then with Karlsson, offensively, he is elite. Defensively, can he be a bit of an adventure? Yes. Does he take more criticism than he should for his defense? Yes. However, again, for going into next season, I would have Karlsson at 6th on the board. So it does get kind of tough. Especially when at number 5, you've got a Dallas defenseman who I do think at some point in time wins a Norris Trophy of his own. Miro Heiskanen. Heiskanen, really good all-around defenseman, plays a ton of minutes, does everything for Dallas. There really isn't more you could ask for. He has really grown his game. He's grown into his cap hit. Again, if you're a Dallas fan, I don't think you have any reason to have any complaints when it comes to Heiskanen's game. Sure, there might. Yeah, there. Yeah, all right, if you want to complain, you can, but I'm not hearing you right now, so it's not much point talking to me. But yeah, Heiskanen, I think, is a fantastic defenseman who, if he played in New York, if he played in Chicago, if he played in Montreal, if he played somewhere that he got more attention, I really think you'd see more consideration for Norris and a lot more praise. So he's top 5 for me. So number 4, New York Rangers. It's got to be Jacob Trouba, right? Has to be. Adam Fox. And honorable mention to Keandre Miller. Miller does not qualify for this list. It's that tough. I love Keandre Miller's game. Adam Fox is elite. And not only that with Adam Fox, people look at his points and his offense, but he's pretty good defensively too. Now, he does play with Ryan Lindgren very often, so I do think Lindgren gives him a little more freedom offensively, but he's not a slouch defensively either. I think Adam Fox is a really, really solid defenseman. And, I mean, the Rangers are set on the blue line with Miller, with Fox, with Lindgren. None of these guys are old. Even Trouba, not old by NHL standards on the blue line. The Rangers' blue line is going to keep them in a pretty good spot for years to come. And Adam Fox is, he's going to win another Norris. It's just a matter of when. So number 3, and this one's an interesting one because it probably won't surprise people who are fans of the channel. I've got Roman Josi up at 3rd. I think Roman Josi at this point's underrated by some. I was looking at some of the lists today, and I was really surprised that Josi wasn't higher on some of the lists I saw. But, I mean, Josi, did he have a down year compared to the previous year? Well, yeah, the previous year he had 96 points. But Josi he's the engine on that blue line, especially now that Ekholm's gone. It's his blue line. He's the guy. And so we'll see how things go for Josi this year. But while Josi may end up starting to drop a bit, because as players get older, that happens. For me, for right now, I still have him at 3rd. Which brings us to 2nd place. Now, I'm pretty sure every other time that I have done a ranking of defensemen, I've had Victor Hedman at number 1. I have him at number 2. Now, injured, yeah. And injuries, again, he's gone through a lot in the playoffs. And just the amount of punishment he's taken is pretty epic. And it's going to affect his play. But he's such a smart defenseman. He is so good at doing what he does. And so, yes, his points are down. He wasn't given the same kind of Norris level voting that he was, say, 4 or 5 years ago. I still think, for my money, he is the 2nd best defenseman in the National Hockey League. And that's my opinion. That absolutely can change this coming season, but again, with that scenario I mentioned with McAvoy and Hughes, it's Game 7. You need a shutdown shift. You tell me, hey, you can get Hedman or one of these other guys. I'm like, is Victor healthy? Is the first question. If the answer is yes, I'm like, then Victor's my guy. Unless Cale Makar. So I always get a kick out of the comments with Cale Makar that he missed time. Well, yeah, but he missed a bunch of games this year. He's still to me, he's still the best defenseman in the National Hockey League. And he had, 66 points in 60 games, something like that. Makar's fantastic. I'm also going to say Devon Toews, honorable mention. Bowen Byram, honorable mention. And I know Devon Toews has been in the top 10 on other lists. For me, he's between 31 and 40. And again, lists like this can really be all over the place. But Byram, if he stays healthy and produces the way I know he can be top 20. He could be top 10. Devon Toews, absolutely. Is he the guy who's the big whoops? Maybe. Also, honorable mentions to Chris Letang, Adam Larson, and Matthias Ekholm in Edmonton. Ekholm, I really, really like in Edmonton. I think he's done quite well so far, and I think Edmonton fans are going to be really happy with Ekholm over a full 82-game schedule. But for my money, it's Cale Makar. Cale Makar is still the best defenseman in the National Hockey League, and so we'll see how things go this season. But again, it is not easy to rank defensemen. I know that people aren't going to be happy with my picks. And I don't say these are expert picks. I don't say these are etched in stone. I don't make a big deal about it because it's just fun. It's fun to do this. And let me know your thoughts. One thing that I do like to do with this is talk about players that maybe don't get as much discussion. So Maybe that's part of the reason that I expanded this to 30. But let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And I look forward to next year when I make it the top 120, because now I've said it, so it's going to happen. Thank you guys again for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.